Hey guys, it's Chelsea Coleman here with Cato, and we are on day 3 of saddling. This is the second time I am going to bring him straight in here and just saddle him up. Another change we have this week is I've got the bridle, which is what we did last time, but I also have a side rein. Now I'm gonna put one side rein on one side. I'll switch sides, and it's gonna be very loose, essentially no contact, but the point of that is to start to get him to understand what contact is without having to spend too much time fiddling with the contact myself. So you can ground drive them, which is essentially a line on both sides. But I feel like where he's at, seeing as he's already been ridden, you know, sat on and walked around, he was not ridden in a bridle, he was ridden in a halter and lead rope, so he kind of has skipped a step. So I have chosen to incorporate the one side rein and the round pin first before we do any line driving or anything like that, just because I feel like that best suits him and where he's at, so that's what we're going to do today.
And our champion now, Chelsea Coleman, Dauntless Courage.
And again, I leave the tack kind of shambled and I make noise intentionally. I'm also consecutively trying to make sure my dogs don't get into any trouble. Good boy. That's all right, they're both out. And he has been a little agitated these past few days. We had his pasture mate was ridden in his field, or in their field, while he was loose. And we were told that he was rounded up on horseback. So he's definitely showcased quite a bit of anxiety with that. And he's been a little bit crabby since that happened. Not necessarily crabby, but on edge, anxious, little more upset than usual. So today will be an interesting day to see what we have in front of us. Good boy. You're all right. Another, just a little piece of insight. He has, since the other horse had been ridden in his field, he, part of his anxious behavior that has picked up is he has started, you're okay, buddy, busting away from us. And, you know, usually he'll hit the end of the lead rope and he'll meet contact and you're okay, buddy. And he'll soften up. A couple days ago, he busted away from us a few times. So that's new. Definitely, I am certain that it has something to do with him, you know, having some anxiety about the other horse being ridden with him. Obviously, it's fair that that was upsetting to him, but he's going to have to get over that. So we just kind of deal with it as it comes. But as you can imagine, you're okay, big boy. Reprimanding or schooling a wild horse is very difficult because you're all right. They don't understand punishment in the way that our domestic horses would. So you can't really, I mean, smacking on them doesn't really do much. You know, it can sometimes make it worse before it gets better by doing that, but he definitely has gotten a little bit more sensitive about things dangling, because when he busted loose from us, obviously his rope was on, and he did not like having that dangling around his feet. And I am just adding a zip tie here to clip this clip to, because that clip, as we discussed last time, is just a little faulty. Good boy, Cato. Got some licking and chewing. Hey, sit, sit. Ma'am? Kylie. Oh, thank goodness my horses listen better than my dogs. And to everyone who hears the back and forth and says, you need to pay attention to what you're doing. When this horse is finished, the amount of times he is sat on and not ignored, but kind of left to his own devices because life goes on, is very high. So, Kylie, come.
She's over there.
Oh, okay. Come here, ma'am. So that's very good for him, regardless of what's going on around him. It's good for him, but it's also good for me to know that I can not be two places at once, because that's not what we want to do, but I can interrupt what I'm doing in the exact moment that I'm doing it with him, and I'm not going to lose him. And I'm not going to lose his attention, and I'm not going to lose his focus, which is nice. Right, big boy? And the bit that I have in his mouth is just a simple leather bit. And that is because I am going to predict that he is going to be very soft-mouthed. Okay. And I left the whip in the trailer. That's okay. Good boy. And again, this is all going to be the same stuff we've been doing. Good boy, Cato. Good job, buddy. Good boy. And a good lick and chew. Hi, good job. And I'm just gonna tighten this a little. Now, keep in mind, I'm not tightening this because I want him to meet the contact necessarily. I'm tightening it more so that he's got a really short neck, and if he were to trip, I would not want him to get tangled up in that, even though it is leather, so I know it will break. I'm simply tightening that up because his neck is so short, and that is quite a large piece of leather. I just don't want him to trip and then get his feet caught. But as you can see, there's still really no contact there, very minimal, which is fine. That's the point, is just to good boy. Good boy. And canter. Canter. Good boy. Good boy. Trot. Good job, Cato. So one thing you might notice about this time, or this session, is he's physically a little bit more up, meaning his head carriage is a little higher, he's a little quicker off his feet, he's a little sharp. That's what I would call sharp, but he's not coming out here today and offering any bucking or rearing or, you know, hogging or any of that stuff, which is nice, because when we brought him over today, we thought, okay, you know, again, this is a morning session, so he's been in all night, and he's been a little aggy the past few days since that horse got ridden in his field. So we had determined that we were gonna come in here today and just kind of see what he is gonna give us, and then make it short and sweet and call it a day. So, good boy. Good job. I'm gonna let that be it for that direction. Then I'm gonna come over, give him a little pat. Good boy. And walk him to the center. You're fine. Good boy. Then what I'm gonna do is switch this to the, you're fine. Switch this to the other side. He doesn't like being held this close to his face. If you ever get an opportunity to watch him on the lead, he hangs at the end of the rope and kind of wants to be as far away from it as possible, which is interesting because he is so sweet, and I wouldn't by any means say he's cuddly, but I think at some point he will be. Hey. And he's upset at this point about something, and that's okay. He's allowed to be that way. Also, this is going to drive everyone who's ever been in Pony Club nuts, but when I've got a horse, well, any young horse or a horse that has never had contact before, I do not ever clip. I do not ever put the tail through the keeper, and that is because in a severe emergency, boom, he's undone. And yes, I understand that it can shake hard enough and unbuckle itself. I would much rather it become unbuckled on its own and have to stop him and go buckle it than stick that through there and God forbid something happen, me not have enough time to get it undone. In a state of an emergency, every second counts for something, especially with horses in general that you've owned for 20 years and trust you. Definitely on a horse like this who has not known us very long and is pretty much fresh off the boat. So we don't want to put him into any situation and eliminate our exit strategies. So this is just another exit strategy of mine. Again, I do not put the keeper in. I understand that if that gets pulled hard enough, it's just a piece of leather, it's going to break, but that's just another piece of equipment that would have to get compromised in order for him to be safe. So I don't ever clip those in, and that's why. He's not going to understand what this is. There we go. He's not wanting to, he's not liking the contact on the right side as much as he was okay with it on the left side, which is interesting. But that's okay. Canter. Good boy, Cato. Good job. And trot. Good boy. Good boy. Another question that might come up is, why do you only put one side rein on? The reason I only put one side rein on a horse like this is because he is very submissive. He will choose to say okay and shut up before he'll choose to have an opinion. And because I know that, I don't want to put him into a position to where he just starts to ignore things because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do. So by putting his first experience with contact in the bit, by putting double side reins on, what that's going to do is put even pressure on both sides of his bit, which is something, in my opinion, that's more easily ignored because it's constant pressure. Whereas here, every time they trot, I mean, there's a second of relief, but it's uniform on both sides. One, he's a wild horse, so he doesn't have the full grasp of a left side and a right side in the same way our domestic horses would. So our domestic horses, from the day they're born, we operate for the most part on the left side. I mean, we work both sides, but we primarily operate off the left side. So that being said, he has not had that experience, and he has since he's been in captivity, but he was not born being taught that philosophy. So I want to make sure he understands both sides are individual, and I would, one, like him to be able to pick a direction, or two, like him to be able to tell me what is his direction. Now, he moves better this direction, but he's more stiff on the contact this direction, which tells me he feels potentially a little bit restricted from his left side when you hook up his right side, meaning if he goes to turn his head and look on his left side to cover his left, he feels restricted when he does that. And that's okay. Obviously, we know he's not in a position where he needs to protect himself on either side, but in his brain, we've taken away his left side. So that's scary. So that's why I only put the one on, because I want him to distinguish that not everything happens on both sides all the time. In theory, yes, you have a horse that's very even in the bridle, but the reality of that is, if you're going to turn a barrel or you're going to go jump a fence and you've got a bending line, you're going to have to work one rein over another. And I understand that through their training, they develop that knowledge, but for me, the risk of making him feel trapped is huge, which putting both side reins on at once for his very first introduction is scary. Because of that trapped feeling, but also I don't want him to get, if he's super comfortable with it, which as you can tell, he doesn't really mind it that much, I don't want him to get to the point where he just says, oh yeah, I feel pressure on both sides of my bit, I'm just going to put my head down, because you can still lose control and there's evasion and all that with that stuff happening. Yes, he might put his head down, but if he decides with that short neck he wants to bury his head into his chest and bolt, you've got nothing. So this horse in particular, our other horse that we do work with, we don't want to do the one rein stop. This horse in particular might be a perfectly good candidate for a one rein stop if he gets nervous. So again, this is teaching him that both sides of his mouth work individually. It's going to feel different to him. He'll be able to distinguish the difference because we switch from one side to another versus having both sides connected at once. Good job. And you'll notice sometimes I give verbal commands and sometimes I don't. The reason why I switch back and forth is because I want him to be aware of my body and my energy. And by me stopping and looking at him and not changing anything I'm saying or anything I'm doing other than taking the physical and metaphorical pressure off, he understands that. Good boy, Cato. I'm just gonna send him and see if, good boy, see if I can't get him to come to me or follow me around a little. Hi, handsome. He's a little off with me the past couple days, and that's okay. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Good job. Good boy. All right, now I'm going to untack him while I'm gonna square his feet up a little. Good boy. I'm gonna untack him while he's not hooked to a lead rope. You're okay. Again, he's a little upset right now from the lead rope banging around and smacking him in the legs, which again, it was a mistake he made, right? He got nervous and he reacted versus thinking, which is fine. But because of that, he has now scared himself, and it is not my job as his educator to constantly, one, save him from himself, but two, reassure him of an insecurity that he created on his own. So I just ignore that. And I'm putting him in a position right now that there's multiple things dangling. And if he bolts and dumps all my tack on the ground, that's completely fine. What I don't want him to get into the habit of, and it's very easy to accidentally do, when you know your horse is afraid of something and you come to that point of the training where you have to address the fear, you do things very quick. So a lot of people would be like, oh, I'm just gonna yank the saddle off because I know it makes him uncomfortable, I wanna rip the Band-Aid off. Wrong answer. He has to cope, and he cannot look at you in the face and say, hey Chelsea, so I am experiencing a little anxiety when you pull the tack over me. He can't do that, right? The only thing he has as words are his physical actions. And it is my job. Could he have a verbal conversation with me? I would say, you don't have to be scared. See, I'm just gonna slowly pull this off and you don't have to worry about it. I can't do that. The only thing I have is my physical action. So I'm gonna let him sit in that for a second. Act cash, because this is not a big deal. And I'm gonna slowly, good boy. Good boy. Good job. Good boy. See, that's not so hard. Good job, Cato. All right, last piece. Again, just gonna push his ears up just a little. And then I'm gonna very slowly drop that out. Good boy. Good job. What do you think of all that? Oh, wow, we're that comfy. Well, you heard it here first, folks. He's real comfortable. And hungry, apparently. Good job, buddy. And that's one of the best things we could see, right? Like, what else could you want to see from a little wild pony? Comfort, that's what we want to see. All right, guys, well, I think that's it for today. Thanks for joining us, and always remember, it doesn't matter where you come from, it only matters where you're going, and we'll see you next time.